April 30th, 1945. 3:15 p.m. 30 feet beneath the Reich Chancellery Garden, Berlin. The air is thick, not with smoke, though smoke lingers, but with something else. Something heavier. Senior Lieutenant Ivan Klimenko of the Soviet 79th Rifle Corps can taste it on his tongue. Cordite, burnt flesh, damp concrete, and the metallic tang of blood that's been sitting too long in confined spaces. His boots crunch on shattered glass as he descends the final steps into the Führer bunker. His PPSH-41 submachine gun raised, finger resting just outside the trigger guard. Behind him, 3 more Red Army soldiers follow in tight formation, their breathing audible in the narrow stairwell, their faces illuminated by the weak beam of Klimenko's flashlight, cutting through the gloom. They've been fighting through Berlin for 16 days now. 16 days of street-to-street combat, of watching their comrades die on every corner, of pushing through a city that refuses to surrender even as it burns. But this is different. This is the heart of it all. The nerve center where Hitler himself commanded the Reich's final, desperate stand. The bunker entrance yawns before them, a concrete mouth leading into darkness. The door has been blown off its hinges, hanging at an awkward angle, twisted metal that once bore the eagle and swastika of Nazi Germany. Klimenko pauses at the threshold, listening. Nothing. No gunfire. No screams. No last-ditch defense by fanatical SS guards willing to die for their Führer. Just silence, thick and oppressive, broken only by the distant rumble of artillery still pounding the city above. Lieutenant. The voice belongs to Private Alexei Churakov. Barely 19, his face still bearing the soft features of boyhood beneath the grime and stubble. Should we wait for reinforcements? Klimenko shakes his head. They've been given direct orders from SMERSH, Soviet military intelligence, to secure this location immediately. Every minute they wait is another minute for evidence to be destroyed, for witnesses to flee, for the truth to slip through their fingers. He's heard the rumors, of course. Everyone has. That Hitler is already dead. That he escaped to Argentina. That he's holed up somewhere in the Alps, preparing a final counterattack. That he never existed at all, just an actor, a body double who fooled the world for 12 years. We go in, Klimenko says quietly. Stay close. Watch for booby traps. They enter. The upper level of the bunker is a study in organized chaos. Papers are scattered everywhere. Documents bearing official seals, maps marked with red pencil showing defensive positions that no longer exist. Telegrams that were never sent. Filing cabinets stand open, their contents rifled through. Though whether by fleeing Nazis or earlier Soviet search parties, Klimenko cannot tell. The walls are lined with photographs. Hitler shaking hands with Mussolini, Hitler reviewing troops, Hitler standing before crowds that stretched to the horizon. In every image, the Führer is smiling, confident, the master of Europe. Now those photographs hang crooked, some shattered by stray bullets or smashed deliberately in acts of final defiance. The soldiers move through rooms that once housed the machinery of genocide. A communications center, its radio still warm, headsets abandoned mid-conversation. A map room where the fate of millions was decided over coffee and cigarettes. Personal quarters. Small, Spartan cells where officers slept between shifts managing the apocalypse. Everything bears the signs of hasty abandonment. Half-eaten meals on tables, cigarettes stubbed out mid-smoke, a book lying face down on a chair, its pages fluttering in the artificial breeze created by the ventilation system that somehow still runs. Lieutenant, Churikov calls from ahead. You need to see this. Klimenko rounds a corner into what appears to be a medical bay. The smell hits him first, disinfectant barely masking the stench of death. 3 examination tables occupy the center of the room, their metal surfaces stained with dried blood. Surgical instruments lie scattered on a side table. Scalpels, forceps, syringes. On the floor, a pile of white coats, their red cross markings visible through the grime. But it's what's on the wall that makes Klimenko's blood run cold. A chart, a medical chart detailing dosages, effects, symptoms. The header reads, Cyanide Administration Protocol. Beside it, a list of names, men, women, even children, with check marks next to most entries. At the bottom, 2 names remain unchecked, A.H. and E.B., Adolf Hitler, Eva Braun. They plan this, Private Dmitry Volkov whispers, his voice barely audible. They plan their own deaths. Klimenko doesn't respond. He's already moving, following the layout burned into his memory from the intelligence briefings they received before the assault. The bunker complex is divided into 2 levels. The Vor bunker, the upper level they're currently in, and the Führer bunker proper, the lower section where Hitler and his inner circle spent their final days. The stairs leading down are narrow, barely wide enough for one man, designed to be defended easily. But there are no defenders now. Only silence. They descend. The temperature drops as they go deeper. 30 feet becomes 40. The concrete walls press in, closing around them like a tomb. The flashlight beam bounces off moisture-slicked surfaces, creating shadows that dance and writhe. Klimenko counts the steps automatically. 17, 18, 19. At the bottom, another corridor stretches before them, this one lined with doors on both sides. Each door is marked with a small brass plaque indicating its purpose. Conference room, kitchen, storage, quarters. The first body appears in front of the 3rd door on the left. He's young, maybe 25, wearing the black uniform of the Waffen-SS, though the insignia has been torn from his collar. He lies face down in a pool of congealed blood, one hand still clutching a Luger pistol. The back of his skull is missing, blown away by a close-range shot. Suicide or execution, Klimenko has seen enough of both in the past 4 years to know the difference. This one is harder to read. The angle is wrong for self-infliction, but there are powder burns around the wound, consistent with the weapon found in his hand. Mark it, Klimenko orders, and Churikov pulls out a notebook, sketching the scene quickly. They move past. More bodies appear, 2 in the corridor, 3 more in what appears to be a mess hall. All SS, all dead within the last 48 hours, judging by the state of decomposition. None killed in combat. No bullet holes in the walls, no signs of struggle. These men died by their own hands or the hands of those they trusted. The last defenders of the Third Reich, choosing death over capture. The corridor opens into a larger space. The Führer bunker's central hall. This is where Hitler held his final conferences, where he raged against generals who suggested retreat, where he moved phantom armies on maps while the real ones dissolved under Soviet artillery. The room is roughly 15 feet square, dominated by a large table in the center, its surface covered with maps, documents, and the remnants of meals. Chairs lie overturned. A crystal chandelier, absurdly elegant for a bunker, hangs crookedly from the ceiling, 2 of its bulbs shattered. But it's not the room that captures Klimenko's attention. It's the door at the far end, standing partially open, light spilling through the gap. Not flashlight light, electric light, powered by the bunker's still-functioning generator. Someone has been here recently. Someone who turned on the lights and either left in a hurry or is still inside. Klimenko signals his men into position, then approaches the door, weapon raised. He can see inside now. White tiles, a porcelain sink, the corner of what might be a bathtub. A bathroom. Hitler's private bathroom, according to the intelligence reports. The light flickers, casting strange shadows. Water drips somewhere, a steady rhythm that echoes in the confined space. He pushes the door fully open. The bathroom is immaculate, or was until recently. The tiles gleam white. The fixtures are polished brass. The mirror above the sink is uncracked. A towel hangs neatly on a rack. Toiletries line a small shelf. A razor, a brush, a small brown bottle labeled sedative. Everything arranged with military precision, as if the occupant might return at any moment. But on the floor, just inside the doorway, lies a crimson stain that spreads across 3 tiles. Blood, still wet enough to reflect the overhead light. Leading from it, a trail of droplets extends toward a second door, this one marked Private Study. Klimenko follows the blood trail, his heart hammering against his ribs. Behind him, Volkov whispers a prayer, something about saints and deliverance. But Klimenko barely hears it. His entire focus narrows to that door, to whatever lies beyond it, to the truth that has consumed the world's attention for the past week. The door is steel, reinforced, the kind designed to withstand a direct hit from artillery. But it stands open, just a crack, wide enough for a man to slip through sideways. He puts his shoulder against it and pushes. The study is smaller than he expected, perhaps 10 feet by 12, the walls lined with bookshelves crammed with volumes bearing titles in German, Italian, and what might be Latin. A desk occupies one corner, its surface bare except for a single photograph in a silver frame. A woman, blonde, smiling, caught in mid-laugh. Eva Braun. Klimenko recognizes her from the intelligence briefings. Hitler's mistress, no, his wife now, according to the documents recovered yesterday from the bunker's outer levels. They married on April 29th, just 30 hours ago, in a civil ceremony conducted while Soviet shells rained down on the ruins above. The blood trail leads to a leather chair positioned beside the desk. The chair faces away from the door, toward a small ventilation grate set into the wall. Someone sat here recently. The leather still holds the impression of a body. The armrest bears smudges that might be fingerprints. But the chair is empty now. Lieutenant. Churakov's voice cuts through Klimenko's concentration. There's another stairwell. It leads up. Klimenko tears his gaze from the empty chair and follows Churakov's pointing finger. In the corner, partially hidden behind a bookshelf that's been pushed aside, a narrow spiral staircase climbs upward into darkness. Emergency exit. It has to be. Every bunker has one, a last escape route in case the main entrance is compromised. But why would anyone use it now? The battle for Berlin is over. The city has fallen. There's nowhere left to run, unless they weren't running away, unless they were running toward something. Volkov, Petrov, secure this level, Klimenko orders. Search every room. I want documentation, photographs, anything that proves who was here and when they left. Churakov, you're with me. They climb. The staircase is steep, the steps worn smooth by years of use. Klimenko counts them automatically. 20, 30, 40. The temperature rises as they ascend, and with it comes a new smell. Not the damp concrete of the bunker, but smoke, thick and acrid, the smell of things that weren't meant to burn being consumed by fire. At 50 steps, they reach a landing. A metal door blocks their path, but it's been forced open from the outside. Its lock shattered by what looks like a crowbar or rifle butt. Klimenko pushes through and emerges into chaos. They're in the Reich Chancellery Garden, or what remains of it. The once manicured grounds have been transformed into a lunar landscape of shell craters and rubble. Trees that once provided shade now stand as blackened skeletons, their branches reaching toward a sky choked with smoke. The Chancellery building itself looms to the east, its neoclassical facade pockmarked with bullet holes, entire sections collapsed into mountains of shattered marble and twisted steel. But it's not the destruction that stops Klimenko in his tracks. It's the smell. That terrible, unmistakable smell that every soldier who's seen combat knows instinctively. Burning flesh. 30 feet ahead, in a shallow crater that might have been caused by a Soviet mortar round, 2 bodies lie in charred ruins. No, not bodies anymore. Shapes. Human shapes, reduced to blackened husks by fire so intense it fused clothing to skin, skin to bone. The larger shape lies on its back, arms drawn up in the pugilistic attitude common to burn victims, mouth open in a silent scream. The smaller shape rests partially atop the first, as if trying to shield it or seeking comfort in death. Around the crater, the ground is scorched black in a perfect circle extending 10 feet in all directions. At the edge of this circle, half buried in loose earth, Klimenko spots a German jerry can, the kind used to transport gasoline. 2 more lie nearby, both empty, their caps removed. Mother of God! Churakov breathes beside him. They approach slowly, weapons still raised despite the obvious fact that these bodies pose no threat. Other Soviet soldiers are arriving now, drawn by the smoke or by orders to converge on the Chancellery. Klimenko hears voices behind him. Russian, excited, confused. Someone is shouting for a commanding officer. Someone else is crying. A third voice demands to know if it's really him, if they finally found Hitler. But Klimenko isn't sure. He's not sure of anything anymore. He kneels beside the crater, examining what remains. The bodies are burned beyond immediate recognition. But details emerge upon closer inspection. The larger figure wears the remnants of a military tunic, its buttons melted but still partially attached. The right sleeve bears a scorched armband, white background, red circle, the twisted cross of the swastika still faintly visible. On what remains of the feet, boots. Military boots, size 9 or 10. Their leather burned, but not completely destroyed. The smaller figure is more delicate, the bone structure suggesting a woman. She wears the remains of a dark dress, its fabric nearly completely consumed. On the left hand, or what's left of it, Klimenko spots something that makes his breath catch. A ring. A simple gold band, blackened by fire but intact, still encircling the charred finger bone. A wedding ring. Get Major Bystrov, Klimenko orders without looking up. And find someone from Smersh. We need proper documentation of this scene before anyone touches anything. Churakov sprints away, leaving Klimenko alone with the dead. He circles the crater slowly, his trained investigator's eye cataloging every detail. The fire was intense, hot enough to char flesh, but not hot enough to completely cremate the bodies. That requires sustained temperatures of 1,400 degrees Fahrenheit or higher, achievable in a crematorium, but not in an open-air burning using only gasoline. These bodies burned for perhaps 15 to 20 minutes before the fire exhausted its fuel and died down. But something is wrong. Something about the scene doesn't fit. Klimenko has seen many bodies during this war. Too many. Bodies killed by bullets, by shrapnel, by fire, by starvation. Bodies dead for hours, days, weeks. Bodies in every state of decomposition and destruction. And something about these bodies troubles him, though he can't immediately articulate what. He's still trying to identify the source of his unease when Major Bistroff arrives, accompanied by a man Klimenko doesn't recognize, tall, thin, wearing the uniform of SMERSH counterintelligence with the shoulder boards of a captain. The captain's face is sharp, intelligent, his eyes taking in the scene with the same trained scrutiny Klimenko employed moments before. "Lieutenant Klimenko?" the captain asks, his voice carrying the educated accent of Moscow. "I'm Captain Ilya Sokolov, SMERSH. You were first on scene?" "Yes, sir. We entered the bunker at approximately 15 hours. Found it abandoned except for several bodies of SS personnel, all apparently suicides. The emergency exit led us here." Sokolov kneels beside the crater, producing a small leather notebook and pencil from his uniform pocket. He sketches quickly, not the bodies, but the surrounding area, noting distances, angles, the position of the empty jerry cans. The bunker entrance below, it was secured. "Door blown open, sir. But that could have been from our initial assault days ago. Or it could have been open from the inside." Sokolov stands, his eyes scanning the Chancellery garden. To allow someone to escape while these two were burned to create a diversion. The thought hangs in the air between them, unspoken but acknowledged. Klimenko has been thinking it since he first saw the bodies. But hearing it articulated by a SMERSH officer makes it real, transforms speculation into possibility. "You think these aren't Hitler and Braun?" Klimenko says quietly. Sokolov doesn't answer directly. Instead, he gestures toward the bunker entrance. "Show me what you found below." They descend back into the earth. Sokolov's flashlight beam joining Klimenko's in pushing back the darkness. The bunker feels different now, more oppressive, as if the walls are slowly contracting. Volkov and Petrov have been busy during Klimenko's absence. They've gathered documents into organized piles on the conference table, photographed the bodies in the corridors, mapped the layout with military precision. "The medical bay first," Sokolov orders. They return to the room with the cyanide chart. Sokolov spends 10 minutes examining it, his face betraying no emotion. He photographs the chart, the list of names, the scattered medical supplies. Then he opens drawers, checking their contents, methodically. In the third drawer, he finds what he's looking for. A wooden box, roughly 12 inches square, lined with velvet. Inside, nestled in individual compartments, are 12 glass vials, each containing a clear liquid. 11 of the vials are empty. The 12th is full. "One unused dose," Sokolov murmurs, holding the vial up to his flashlight. Either they changed their minds about the method of death, or they never intended to use it at all. They move to Hitler's private study. Sokolov examines the empty chair, the photograph of Eva Braun, the blood trail that led Klimenko up and out to the garden. He opens desk drawers, finding them mostly empty, cleared out recently, their contents removed or destroyed. But in the bottom drawer, pushed to the back, he discovers a small leather case. Inside the case, a passport, German, issued in 1944. The photograph shows a man in his late 50s, clean-shaven, unremarkable features. The name listed is Friedrich Weber. Occupation listed as commercial traveler. But when Sokolov holds the photograph up next to the portrait of Hitler hanging on the study wall, certain similarities become apparent. The shape of the nose, the set of the eyes, the distinctive hairline, a disguise, an escape route, a plan. "Lieutenant," Sokolov says slowly, returning the passport to its case, "I want this entire bunker complex sealed. No one enters or exits without my direct authorization. Every document, every photograph, every scrap of paper is to be catalogued and sent to Moscow. The bodies in the garden are to be removed for autopsy under military guard. And this conversation, everything you've seen here today, is now classified at the highest level. Do you understand?" Klimenko nods. He understands perfectly. He understands that the official story, Hitler dead by his own hand, his body burned beyond recognition, will be the story the world receives. He understands that the doubts, the inconsistencies, the missing evidence will be buried as deeply as the bunker itself. But Klimenko also understands something else, something that Captain Sokolov hasn't said aloud, but that hangs between them like smoke. If Hitler escaped, if those bodies in the garden are substitutes, then the war isn't truly over. The monster still walks free, somewhere beyond their reach, and the millions who died to stop him died without achieving final victory. "Sir," Klimenko says carefully, "the soldiers who came up with me, Churakov, Volkov, Petrov, they saw the bodies. They'll talk." Sokolov's expression doesn't change. "Then we give them something else to talk about. Come with me." They return to the garden, where a crowd of Soviet soldiers has gathered around the crater. Some are taking photographs with personal cameras, forbidden. But in the chaos of Berlin's fall, military discipline has become flexible. Others simply stare, trying to comprehend that these charred remains might be all that's left of the man who brought the world to its knees. Major Bistrov is attempting to establish a perimeter, but more troops arrive every minute, drawn by rumors spreading through the Soviet forces like wildfire. Sokolov climbs onto a pile of rubble, raising his voice to address the assembled soldiers. "Comrades, you stand witness to history. On this day, May 2nd, 1945, the Soviet Red Army has discovered the remains of Adolf Hitler and Eva Braun, who took their own lives rather than face Soviet justice. The fascist beast is dead. The war in Europe is won." A cheer erupts from the soldiers, not of joy, exactly, but of relief, of validation, of the profound satisfaction that comes from knowing the enemy has been vanquished. Klimenko sees Churakov pumping his fist in the air, sees Volkov embracing Petrov, sees tears streaming down the faces of men who fought from Stalingrad to Berlin without breaking. And he understands the genius of what Sokolov has just done. Given them certainty, given them closure, given them an ending to a story that desperately needs one. But as the celebration continues, Sokolov pulls Klimenko aside, along with a medical officer named Captain Dmitry Shkarovsky, who's arrived with a team to examine the bodies. The three men form a tight huddle away from the crowd. The autopsy will be conducted at a secure location, Sokolov says quietly. "Captain Shkarovsky, you will find evidence consistent with cyanide poisoning and gunshot wounds. You will confirm that the male body matches Hitler's known medical records, height approximately 175 centimeters, age mid-50s, evidence of Parkinson's disease in the remaining tissue. You will identify these remains as Adolf Hitler and Eva Braun. Is that clear?" Shkarovsky, a heavy-set man with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, hesitates. "Captain, I cannot falsify medical evidence. If these bodies don't match, they will match closely enough. Sokolov interrupts. Close enough for a body burned beyond recognition. Close enough for a man and woman of approximately the right age and build. Close enough to satisfy Moscow and close enough to satisfy history. What they won't be is certain. There will always be doubt, always be questions, always be the possibility that we're wrong. And if we are wrong? Klimenko asks. If Hitler did escape? Sokolov's face hardens. Then we have teams searching for him. Teams that don't need the world's press watching their every move. Teams that don't need enemy sympathizers knowing exactly what leads we're following. The official story gives us room to work in the shadows. It gives us time. He pauses, looking back at the crowd of soldiers still celebrating around the crater. And it gives them peace. After what they've endured, after what they've sacrificed, don't they deserve that? Klimenko has no answer. He thinks of the cities he's marched through: Stalingrad, Kursk, Warsaw, Berlin. Each one a graveyard, each one a testament to the cost of this war. He thinks of his own squad, the 12 men who started this journey with him from Moscow, and the 3 who remain. He thinks of the villages they passed through in Belarus, where the Nazis hanged every man over 16 and burned the rest alive in wooden churches. He thinks of the mass graves they discovered at Majdanek, at Treblinka, at a dozen other places whose names he can't remember, but whose smells he'll never forget. Do they deserve peace? Yes. God, yes. I'll need the bunker cleared by tonight. Sokolov continues, his voice all business again. Everything transported to our headquarters for analysis. I want this site destroyed, collapsed, buried, erased. By the time the Americans and British arrive, there should be nothing left to find but rumors. Over the next 8 hours, Klimenko supervises the most surreal operation of his military career. Teams of soldiers move through the bunker like ants, carrying out boxes of documents, bags of personal effects, photographic equipment, communications gear, furniture, artwork, food stores, anything that might provide evidence of who was here and when they left. The bodies in the corridors are photographed, documented, and removed in canvas bags. The medical supplies, the maps, the charts are all catalogued with methodical precision. In Hitler's private quarters, a small bedroom off the main conference hall, they find a wardrobe containing 6 identical military tunics, 3 pairs of trousers, and a single civilian suit. The suit is made of fine wool, tailored for a man of medium build, with nothing in the pockets except a crumpled train schedule dated April 20th, 1945, Hitler's 56th birthday. The schedule lists departures from Berlin to Munich, from Munich to Bern, from Bern to Genoa, a route to Switzerland, a route to Italy, a route to anywhere but here. They find Eva Braun's quarters next door, slightly larger than Hitler's, decorated with a woman's touch. Photographs in silver frames show her skiing in Bavaria, swimming in mountain lakes, laughing with friends whose faces have been carefully cut from the images. Her wardrobe contains elegant dresses, furs, jewelry, the trappings of wealth accumulated while millions starved. But what strikes Klimenko most is the collection of letters bundled in pink ribbon, stored in a hat box under the bed. He reads the top one, dated April 28th, just 4 days ago. My dearest Eva, if you are reading this, I am already gone. Do not mourn what cannot be changed. Remember only that I loved you in my way, as much as a man like me can love. The future we planned will not come to pass, but another future waits. Have courage. Have faith. The phoenix rises from ashes. Ah. Klimenko shows the letter to Sokolov, who reads it twice before carefully folding it and placing it in his jacket pocket. Proof of nothing, he says. A love letter. A goodbye. Nothing more. But they both know it's more than that. It's a promise, a plan, a hint that somewhere, somehow, the story didn't end in this bunker. By midnight, the evacuation is complete. Sokolov personally oversees the placement of demolition charges throughout the bunker complex. Not enough to completely destroy it, but enough to collapse key sections, to make thorough investigation difficult for anyone who comes after. Klimenko and his remaining squad stand in the Chancellery Garden, watching as the charges are detonated in a series of controlled explosions that shake the ground beneath their feet. The bunker entrance collapses with a deep groan, concrete and steel folding in on itself, sealing whatever secrets remain below. Dust billows up in a gray cloud, mixing with the smoke still rising from the ruins of Berlin. Within minutes, the entrance is buried under tons of rubble, indistinguishable from 1,000 other piles of debris scattered across the destroyed city. Return to your units, Sokolov orders, dismissing Klimenko and his men. Write your reports. Say that you discovered the bunker, found evidence of Hitler's suicide, recovered the bodies. Nothing more, nothing less. What happens next is beyond your concern. But as Klimenko trudges through the ruins toward his unit's temporary headquarters, he knows that what happens next will haunt him for the rest of his life. The official story will say that Soviet forces found Hitler's body burned beyond recognition, but identifiable through dental records. The autopsies, multiple autopsies, conducted over the coming months, will contradict each other, offering conflicting evidence about cause of death, time of death, even the number of bodies recovered. Stalin himself will tell the Allied leaders at Potsdam that Hitler might have escaped to Spain or Argentina, keeping the possibility alive, keeping the fear alive, keeping the West looking over its shoulder. The dental records used to identify Hitler's remains will come from his dentist's assistant, captured days after the bunker's discovery, who will draw detailed charts from memory, charts that conveniently match the jaws recovered from the garden. No X-rays will ever surface for comparison. No photographs of the intact bodies will be released. The remains themselves will be moved repeatedly, from Berlin to Magdeburg, buried and exhumed multiple times, until finally, in 1970, they'll be cremated and scattered in an East German river, destroying any possibility of modern forensic analysis. And the doubts will grow. Conspiracy theories will flourish in the absence of certainty. Books will be written claiming Hitler escaped to Argentina, to Antarctica, to a secret base in the Arctic. Witnesses will emerge claiming to have seen him in South America in the 1950s, in Paraguay in the 1960s. Each story more elaborate than the last. Some will be dismissed as fantasy. Others will be investigated seriously by intelligence agencies who can never quite close the file, never quite satisfy themselves that the monster truly died in that bunker. 3 weeks after entering the Führer bunker, Klimenko receives a visitor at his unit's barracks. A young woman in civilian clothes who introduces herself as a secretary from the Soviet archives. She carries an envelope, which she hands to him without ceremony. Inside, he finds a single photograph. The burned bodies in the garden, taken from an angle that clearly shows their position, their condition, the surrounding area. On the back, in Sokolov's handwriting, Remember what you saw. Remember what you know. Remember that some truths are too dangerous to tell. Klimenko burns the photograph that night, watching it curl and blacken in the flames of a small fire, just as those bodies burned in the Chancellery Garden. But he doesn't burn the memory. He carries it with him through demobilization, through the long train ride back to Moscow, through the decades of life that follow. He never speaks of it, not to his wife, not to his children, not even to his fellow veterans when they gather to remember the war. But sometimes, late at night, when sleep won't come, and the ghosts of Berlin walk through his dreams, Klimenko returns to that moment in the bunker, to the empty chair, to the blood trail, to the passport for Friedrich Weber. And he wonders, what was missing from that bunker? Not Hitler's body, perhaps. That might have been there, charred and unrecognizable in the garden. But something else was missing. Something more important. Certainty. The Soviets found chaos. They found evidence of death, but not proof of whose death. They found a story that could be shaped, molded, manipulated to serve the needs of politics and power. They found exactly what they needed to find. Enough to declare victory, not enough to answer every question. And maybe that was the point all along. Maybe the missing evidence wasn't a failure of investigation, but a triumph of strategy. Keep the enemy uncertain. Keep the West looking. Keep the possibility alive that somewhere, the architect of the greatest evil the world had ever known might still be plotting, still be planning, still be waiting for his moment to return. Because fear, Klimenko learned in that bunker, is sometimes more useful than truth, and an enemy who might still live is more terrifying than one confirmed dead. The dawn breaks over Berlin on May 3rd, 1945, casting long shadows across the ruins of the Reich. The soldiers of the Soviet Red Army celebrate their victory, never knowing that the greatest mystery of the war, what really happened to Adolf Hitler, will remain unsolved for generations. The bunker keeps its secrets, buried under tons of concrete and steel, waiting for historians who will dig and debate and disagree for the next 80 years. And somewhere in the vast machinery of Soviet intelligence, a file is created and marked with the highest classification. Operation Myth. Inside, all the evidence that doesn't fit the official story, all the doubts that can't be spoken aloud, all the questions that will never be answered. The file grows thicker over the years, fed by investigations that lead nowhere, by witnesses who recant their testimony, by evidence that vanishes before it can be analyzed. And with each edition, the truth becomes more obscure, more distant, more impossible to prove. Until finally, there is no truth left. Only stories, only possibilities, only the haunting knowledge that on that day in May 1945, the Soviets found Hitler's bunker and discovered something far more troubling than a body. They discovered that evil doesn't always announce its own death. Sometimes it simply disappears into shadow, leaving only questions in its wake, a revival.